Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Here with a special Friday edition of MSP Community Live. I don't know where Ray is. I know he's traveling somewhere. That's all I know. I'm Matt Topper, and we have our special guest today, Josh. First, thank you for filling in. And two, can you do an intro in case anyone has not seen you before or doesn't know you?
Yeah, sounds good. I am Josh Holbein. I'm with the MSP currently. My title is Information Security Lead, so I'm definitely more focused on the security side of things. But I've been working with four MSPs with MSPs since about 2001, 2002. So plenty of MSP and IT experience with a little bit of restaurant management background as well. So bring a little of everything.
And interesting to me, you're a big runner too, right? This is two runners on the show.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know you were also a big runner. I know you're in the health wellness channel a lot, but if we have time, what do you run? Like half marathon? What's your go-to?
So my favorite event is the half. I also like 10 milers, but actually this season I've been doing a lot of shorter runs.
Okay.
Like not quite 5K training, but I think probably 10K is about my optimal distance at the moment. Just because I got sick of running so many miles during training, so I cut it back a little bit.
It's a lot. I know when I was in my prime doing ultra marathon training, running 50 miles a week, that's like all you do. It's a part-time job. So I think,
Yes,
doing the short miles through the week and then like a Saturday or Sunday 10-mile long run, that's perfect. It's a perfect distance.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Like my daily run is maybe it's somewhere between 5 and 10K, which is it feels short because I'm used to doing those super long runs during the week, but man, it's really nice to be done with your workout in like an
Yep.
hour.
Sure is. Yeah. Like, oh, I have the whole day to do stuff.
Exactly. All right. Well, maybe we can do a show about running one day, but nobody wants to hear about us running and training plans and all that. So let's get to today's first story. Okay, starting from scratch. Are we able to pull it up? Yes. Okay.
There we go.
So hello there. I'm a tech-oriented person. I don't have extensive IT experience. Okay. I do, however, have a couple of clients waiting for me to start. Journey begins through research, understanding aspects of an MSP, services, jumping all over the place, backup, RMM, security, risk management. He's definitely rambling. No argument there. Where I am there, okay, so he's one of the first MSPs in the area, it looks like, or the first one not doing break fix. Can anyone help me list down what I need to get down first and then build up from there? So, one of the things that jumps out to me on this is this person said he came right out and said doesn't have extensive IT experience and apparently has never run an MSP before. So, like, my first question is, how did you get into this in the first place? Like, it's kind of a weird thing to see.
Yeah, that is an odd one. Like, hey, I don't really know, have that experience, but I want to do this, which is great. The passion is great. The idea is great, but there's so much more behind the scenes than just saying, hey, I have this idea and I want to do it. The one thing
Yeah.
I always say is, and one thing I've always preached is like, you got to be good at sales and marketing. I mean, that's like, even it doesn't matter. We could throw MSP out the window. Let's talk about any business, right? Like you like working on teeth, whatever, your dentist, or in my case, my early 20s, my friends and I had a video game competition company. Like, yeah, we all love video games. Cool. So let's start a business on it. And then you quickly realize that, like, okay, I'm really knowledgeable about the subject, but like, I don't know anything about business. I don't know how to sell it, how to market it. And regardless of any position you're at, whether you're a security guy like me or level one tech, I mean, being good at sales, marketing, and making connections and customer service is just going to help you no matter what your position is. So that's like step one is let's throw the tech out of it.
I know, right? Normally, the challenge is that somebody comes in, they've been a tech for a long time and say, hey, I want to do the business, and they realize they don't know the business side. This person appears not to know the business side or the tech side, right? It's almost as if they saw an opportunity, hey, maybe we can make some money doing managed services. First, what is that? So let's try and help. I'm guessing the comments to this were not very positive, but let's try and help out this poster.
I mean, step
Start
one, get a job as an MSP, probably.
Yeah, right. That's not a bad idea.
It could be one of those things too, where like he's a tech-oriented person, so he might be the person that they go to at Christmas time. If family members get a new phone or a new laptop, and they're like, "Hey, man, can you set this up?" And he enjoys doing it. He might have a couple clients where he goes through and does like maybe virus scans or builds computers and things. But there's a huge difference, and he obviously doesn't say, so I could be wrong, between personal home user IT and business IT. So I mean, I would really start there is learning how simple networking and actual business IT would differ from your home computers.
Yeah. Right. And my advice to this person, I think, would be to step back, or is it step up based on what I'm about to say? Like, really try and get the 10,000-foot view of what you're trying to do here, right? To me, it seems like this person has a desire to work in the MSP industry in some way, or to create an MSP, without really thinking about what that's going to entail. So he's getting sidetracked in things like picking an RMM, picking a backup solution. And I think stepping back a little bit and saying, okay, here's a list of the things I need. I need an RMM. I need a backup. Like, how is that going to fit into the overall picture of what your offering is? In addition to how your agreements are structured and how you handle support and all of that stuff. And step away from the tech for a second and just figure out what this is going to look like. And to your point, the hardest part for us as technical people is the soft sales and marketing skills, right? That relationship building. Um, I think from what I've seen, this endeavor from this poster is at least several months away from launching. He needs to spend some time making contacts in the industry. If he doesn't, not necessarily in the MSP industry, in whatever industry he wants to serve, right? Getting some relationships built, getting your offering together, and just starting bigger. At least that's my piece. Any other advice you would give him?
I would say let's take out sales marketing and kind of build on what you're saying is let's build your processes. Like, yes, you need an RMM software, but how do you want your service to look like? What is going to
Yeah,
be like? How do you reach your customer? How do you plan on working with them, and what all services you want? And then what does your process look like? And then first, document, putting the security back on,
Mhm.
documented processes. But then you don't even want to start looking at tools until you have your process and how you want to do things down. Because if you're using you go and interview all these tools and they all do fantastic things and you're like, okay, cool, that's the one I want. And then you figure out how you do things around that tool. Well, what happens if that tool becomes unavailable, or you can't afford it anymore, or something is unobtainable with that tool? Well, now your processes are built around that very business critical tool, and you kind of spiral from there. Whereas if you have your process, you know exactly what you want and how you want to deliver it. Now you go find tools that match your process. It is not about the tool. All the tool is doing is helping you make your process more efficient or more better. If something happens to that tool, cool. We have our process solid in place. Now we can backfill it with something else. So tools are like the last thing you need to look at.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's not about the tool. All right, I think we've beaten this to death. There's only so many ways we can say the
I
same
know.
thing.
It's fun to talk about tools, though. What's in your stack is like the best conversation between MSP people.
It's fun as text to talk about it, and as we talk more to other people in the industry and have these kinds of discussions, you get so tired of the "what tool should I use"
Yeah.
conversation.
I much rather have the how are you doing this conversation, and then hey, if it involves a tool, cool. But it's more interesting to me.
Well, you're a security guy, so we can have the "what framework should we use" conversation
That's
instead.
true.
I'm sure
Yep.
you're just as sick of that.
Yep. Any of them. Pick one.
All right, let's move on. Okay, working with in-house IT. So I'm guessing this is some kind of like co-managed setup. Maybe I haven't read the thread yet. Working for a month now with a client whose in-house tech support is overseas. So I'm effectively, okay, so he's kind of remote hands. They've been unable to scan the email for the last month, had to go back in trouble. Yeah. So just a side, right? Scan to email is one of the most annoying issues to fix as a tech because you can't do any of it remote without asking the person on site like 500 times. Does it work now? Can you try it now? So frustrating. Send the overseas IT team the exact same information each time, and they keep insisting it must be on the local sender side. Okay, maybe, right? Is there any empirical data to show that? Delivery failure message is actually saying it's being blocked by Mimecast. Okay, due to a policy, so I don't know how they came to that conclusion. I think this is more, okay. No, it is not more of a rant. I think the question here is really a relationship political type question as far as how do you deal with something like this? Because we as MSPs run into that too all the time. Sometimes there's local in-house IT, right? Sometimes it's co-managed. Sometimes it's with another vendor. I've run into this frequently with vendors that my clients used, a voice vendor, not OIT, some local little voice vendor that had like a voicemail to email not working and like just would not look at their own equipment to troubleshoot it. I'm sure you have too, Josh. So let me ask you this because I've just been ranting for the last couple minutes. How do you deal with that? Like, how do you have the conversation, or what are strategies you can use if you're a tech and are dealing with this kind of issue hot potato that nobody really wants to take responsibility for? How do you make that into a productive discussion as opposed to just finger pointing?
Yep. I mean, first off, I can definitely see like it's frustrating. No one wants to be the issue that no one wants to be the person that's like, oh, it's not working because of something I did, and like in your heart, like no, that like we go back to internal IT, like network guys, it's never the network, it's never the network. Well, it's always DNS. So
Yeah.
instead of trying to finger point and say, hey, it's not me, hey, it's not you, like we're on the same team. We're trying to solve the same issue. Like it's not working. Both of us want this to be working, right? And both of us are going to be doing different things. So it really, to your point, comes down to it's not a technical issue at this point. I mean, it is, but it is more of a relationship issue. So the advice that I would give is, hey, get your receipts. Like if you are going to say, hey, it's not me, then you need to prove without a shadow of a doubt that it is not your equipment. So all documentation you can have, all tests, basically, build your receipts, Word document, OneNote, whatever. And basically, here's your screenshots. Here's all the troubleshooting that you've provided. Here's everything that says, hey, we have exhausted all of our troubleshooting resources. And this is the conclusion that we've gone to. So we want to fix this. This is what we need to do further. And I guess if at that point, if the vendor doesn't want to play ball, then you kind of have to escalate it. Or, again, it's a relationship issue. Get the client involved and basically, again, show them, hey, this is everything we've done. And here's all of the receipts. Like this is where we're stuck at.
Yeah. You said escalate, and I know you mean to a higher contact in the vendor. One of the points I would make about this is actually an attempt to de-escalate the tension, right? Because I've been involved in lots of these, and it's human nature. It becomes like a personal thing before too long, right? You like get so dug into. There's no way it's my system that you almost stop looking for the problem, and you start thinking, okay, how can I show it's really this guy's issue? And like we say we don't do that, but we do. Like it's just human nature. And one tip I think is to be cognizant of that. Like that's going to happen no matter how neutral you think you are. Your pride is going to come out when this starts happening. It happens to me, happens to you, Josh. I'm sure everyone else who's worked in tech has gone down this road. And it takes some self-control at the end to not start saying things like, throwing it back in the vendor's face or, like any kind of told you so email or anything like that is probably you still have to work with these guys in the future. Um, really try and take that tension out of it and recognize when you're going down that road of, I'm just playing for pride at this point. And if you can get yourself out of that mindset, you might even find that the issue was on your side, right? Like a classic example, you mentioned networking, right? So for the network, how many times has it been, I'm taking performance counters every 5 minutes, and it turns out there was a spike in between them that never registers on the thing, and that's why it's slow. Like you just stop looking at stuff like that after a while because your judgment gets clouded. So really remember, it can be your stuff too. Let's get the comments of this one. Can we pull up the comments? I'd be interested to see how this was responded to.
It's like people trying to help him out, giving him more troubleshooting steps here, which is good. But I mean, it seems like from his post, he kind of went through and he's like very adamant that it's not on his side.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of people trying to help with the direct diagnostic issue, which is our nature. We're all techs. That's what we gravitate to first. Anyone talking about the relationship?
If you scroll down a little bit, I think there is, and that's where hey, make sure POC VIPs are everywhere,
Yes.
and that's what I said. You make sure you document everything, make sure you communicate, because not to point fingers and say, "Yep, see, told you it's not our problem," but just show that you're trying to work with the vendor, with whoever you're working with, and you've really done your part, and looking for kind of next steps and things like that. So
Yeah, I like that guy's response. Should go upvote it.
it's the CYA email. That's what that's called.
Yeah. Okay, well, we can move on from that. I think we've beaten that one to death too. We'll beat all stories to death today. Oh, your cat showed up. Does
Hey, see, this is Millie.
do you have any thoughts on working with third-party vendors?
Not a fan, actually. I'm pretty much the only human she likes. She runs and hides from everyone else. So
Nice.
Yeah, anytime she sees me with headphones on in a meeting, she's like, "All right, cool. You have time to pet me because you're not on your mouse and keyboard."
Nice. All right, let's move on before we beat this one to death too and lose our audience. Okay, this is a really cool story. One, I'm just glad to see that IAC is being used enough that it popped up in a Reddit thread at MSP. So that's cool thing number one. How do you support cloud customers who use IAC? So more and more organizations are starting to use IAC like Terraform, Chef Puppet, CloudFormation to build their cloud applications and infra. They still need support from their MSPs. They don't want us making direct changes in their accounts that could create configuration drift. Yep. Unsure of the best way to support these types of customers from a business and technical perspective. Yep, might need to hire more devs. Technical side, do you gain access to their IAC repositories and make changes? Okay, so I'm going to frame this as a more general question than they did. I think this is a discussion about if you have a technical client, how do you draw the line and differentiate between MSP support and production support? I think that's what they're really asking here is, if their infra is like, say you're helping a SaaS company, right? Do they have ops people who manage their own IAC, or do you get involved in that, or where do you draw the line? How would you handle that? Is I think how I would frame it.
Yep.
So, with that very clear question, I'll let you comment.
Yeah, this one is interesting to me. So the first thought I have to mind is it's just like when you're engaging, let's say you're on the security side and from the MSP and you want to engage like a third party SOC, 24/7 SOC, right? You need to have that designation of, do you want them to come in and actually like remote into your clients' environments and take care of things or not? So you have kind of a levels of engagement conversation. And I feel that would apply to that. It's like, hey, we need to have a conversation over what is our responsibility and what is your responsibility. Make a shared responsibility matrix. And that way you have clear defined lines of what you're covering and what's not in scope, out of scope. Outside of that instance, I actually, this is one that I have personal experience with. My previous MSP, I was basically the Rent-A-Tech level 3 Azure support for one of our largest clients, and they had a very extensive Azure environment. So what I was in charge of is basically the kind of overall company infrastructure of it, but no underlying code. VMs itself, like patching maybe, but just kind of the security and the networking side of it. But I didn't touch any of the code, any of the databases. I worked with the people who were in charge of that to make sure, like, hey, this isn't working. So, is it on our side or is it with the code? Or, hey, the code people we want to build this, so we need the right permissions. Like, cool, here's your resource group. And then get everything ready for them and then hand it off to them for them to put the code on. So I think it all comes down to the communication and basically shared responsibility matrix, in my opinion.
Yeah. So as I assume most of you know, I worked for a SaaS company before I worked for ConnectWise, and we had most of our infra for the product in AWS, and there was an MSP taking care of some of the basic workstation stuff and that kind of thing. And there is no way we would have let that MSP anywhere near any of our infra code, right? We had people in-house doing that. What we didn't necessarily have people in-house doing was taking care of patching on Windows laptops, until I eventually took that over, but in a different role, right? So I think with any organization that has a technical function that the MSP could theoretically support, um, you have to be very clear about what the scope of service is in this case, right? Are they working your production? Hopefully not, right? If they are, then they need to go through all the same CI/CD stuff and all the same coding standards and everything that one of your devs would do. Or as the MSP, are they just doing your infra? And kind of it goes the other direction too, right? So say you're big enough that you have some operational infrastructure that's not related to your production or dev workload or anything like that, but maybe you have a service that internal IT needs that's sitting in Azure, right? And that's deployed as code. Okay, then the MSP touches that and your devs don't, right? That situation, that separation is super, super critical. And I think this goes back to something that ends up being the root cause of many, many issues, and we should like highlight it on, right on Reddit and like sticky it. Communicate and set expectations, right? It's that simple. That the only reason this is a question is because who maintains the IAC stuff didn't come up during the sales process, most likely.
Yep, and I wouldn't want to touch that. I mean, that's an entirely different skill set. I'm very well versed in Azure. You got Microsoft certifications and things like that. I don't understand anything about Terraform and like Docker, Kubernetes. I just don't really have any real world experience for it. So that would be like, hey, I can support the surrounding infrastructure. Glad to help. Glad to build out resource groups and make sure everything's secure. But I'm not touching anything beyond that. It's outside
Yeah.
of my scope of work, and I don't want to be responsible for it.
No, that's another good point. I mean, for the most part, for MSPs, it's a different skill set than what they're used to. This specific issue, right? Dealing with IAC stuff. Now, that being said, it's starting to go that way, right? We're thankfully seeing more MSPs starting to have DevOps type people on staff. But your typical, relatively new or relatively small MSP is mostly still handling servers, workstations, and cloud apps, right? They're not at the point of having a DevOps person yet. And if you don't know how to deal with that, definitely stay away. I wouldn't touch it just because I don't want to be have the finger point when somebody's production app is down. Aside from the stuff I know how to support, right? No, thank you.
We even kind of deal with that, and kind of in the similar vein to like Linux machines. Is like, I know my way around Linux machines, but let's say you have a client who you standardize, whatever Windows Macs, and you put an EDR agent on all those. Now you have a client who has a Linux machine, and most EDRs, they can go on Linux. But then it's like, cool, we can apply, like, where I would stay is we can apply, give the installer, give the code, but I'm going to hand it off to whoever owns that Linux machine, because yeah, sure,
Mhm.
I can go in there. I know the commands. I can, do ls, whatever, make the folder and install it. But now if something goes wrong, I don't know how to troubleshoot a Linux machine. I don't want that responsibility. So again, same thing, like draw your lines and make sure that you're not breaking anything and you're not responsible for it.
For sure. And even if you do have the skill set, right? I was a Linux admin before I get into the Windows world. And we took on a client that was all Linux, and a lot of problems with that. One is I was the only one who could support them, so they were in trouble if I ever went on vacation. But two, they were also a bunch of Linux nerds, and they would, with some frequency, go in and like start messing with things because they could, and then call me when they got stuck. And I'm like, guys, this does not work. Um, all of a sudden, right, they're like halfway through some update or through some settings change, the whole thing blows up, and now here I am trying to undo the damage later, right? There needs to be some agreement on demarcation on these things, and there just wasn't in this case. So I can say from experience, it just doesn't go well when you have that expectation mismatch. Just like everything else, in hindsight, I really wouldn't have taken on this client, or I would have said, guys, you need to stop adminning completely if I'm doing this. Um, right. So that I think you said it best. One, the expectation setting and the shared responsibility. It's not just a concept for cloud and on-prem customers, really between MSP and client, that it just needs to be super, super clearly defined.
Yep. Agreed, because it comes into more cloud. It goes, same thing with VoIP systems. Like most MSPs don't touch the VoIP systems. So again, replace VoIP with cloud, replace that with
Yeah.
Linux, replace it with whatever.
All right. We can move on. I think our point has been made 3 or 4 times over at this point.
All right, what do we have next?
Okay, so so before we even get to this, there's absolutely no legal advice given on this show, right? When you get into contracts, ask an attorney, and ideally ask your attorney, right? Not just any attorney, the one who wrote your contract, ideally. That being said, you have a client that decides to cancel early, although you have them in a short term contract. Do you hold them to it till the end, or do you let them out? Ooh. Our issue is the amount of time and effort we put into the client for them to lead us down the rabbit hole. Decided to make a move without control. Yeah, okay, they're probably not going to talk to you first if they're that unhappy. In the medical industry, requirement that we cannot fulfill. We understand that. Short notice and demit. Wow, there's a lot to unravel here. Do you not have a bad relationship with them at all? Kind of sounds like you do.
Yeah.
Feel like we were used as a stopgap measure and it was not disclosed to us beforehand and they signed 6 months ago. Per the Wow, okay. I won't even color the discussion by giving my thoughts. I'll let you go first on this, Josh,
Sounds
because
good.
I'll
I
talk for
mean,
10 minutes.
the one that stands out to me is it says we cannot fulfill. They have a requirement that we cannot fulfill, and we understand that. So let's throw the contract out of the window. The client has a need that you're not able to fulfill. I mean, you're going to keep them on kicking and screaming for the 6 next months. Well, you can't do something that they need. The contract side of things, that's legal. But from a personal standpoint, I guess it's business. And I think you handle the breakup amicably, and, hey, we appreciate, the partnership we've had so far, and try to mend the relationship the best you can. I mean, it only makes you look better if you handle breakups well, versus the story that we've seen against every. I mean, there's at least weekly, like, hey, this MSP is not letting go of this client. What do we do? What legal actions do we have to take? And I mean, this could potentially turn into one of those. So, um, I'm gonna say, be like Elsa and let it go.
So I have a few thoughts on this. One is the most obvious. Why do you want to work with someone who doesn't want to work with you anymore, right? Just let them go. I mean, I agree, but not necessarily for the same reason. Um, if they're angry and they're annoyed, like, man, just drop them, right? Like, I don't get this idea of holding them to the contract where you'll both be miserable trying to support them. They won't be receptive to any ideas. You'll get complaints about every bill. Like, it's just not worth it. That being said, I do think there's one additional consideration here. I will have to see if the comments brought this up. And that is if you, as the MSP, are on the hook for any costs, you have to get those recouped. I think that's fair and reasonable. But as far as the service goes, then no. But things like if you are on Microsoft NCE, right, and you're on the hook for a year for email services and license, or maybe your backup vendor you signed a year agreement with, stuff like that that you can't get out of or repurpose, that's fair to require pay. I mean, ideally, you require paying stuff like that up front. But if not, and you're still on the hook for costs, then I think that needs to be taken into consideration. But I think don't hold them too strongly to the agreement is something that I preach for almost everything in the industry, right? So when I was doing professional services management, we would not very often hold someone directly to whatever was in the statement of work unless it was a huge differentiation, right? So if we had something that, yes, technically would be a change request, I'm not going to write up a change request for like 2 or 3 hours of work. Or if, they needed one additional hour, or like, yeah, the statement of work said all support after hours work can end at 5, and they want me to do it at 8 one night, right? Like, it's just not worth holding your clients to agreements like that long term in general. But on this case, for sure, my opinion is let them go. So I'm curious what the comments said.
Well, and I think too, there's a lot of information missing from this as kind of as well, because I mean, there are things like you said, the licensing, there's a lot of it depends. Obviously,
The
even if you were
consulting
to go
world.
down the wrong, like, court's expensive too. It's probably not worth it. Again, having that unhappy relationship between the two of you can lead to, hey, now you have a bad taste in the mouth, and your client will talk to other clients and other clients and things like that. So it just comes down to reputation and the cost analysis. Is it
Right.
worth trying to get those 6 months out of them compared to the negative side of things?
So Dean just had a really good comment. One of my MSPs had a nicely defined exit clause. Other didn't. I'm almost curious, Dean, as to what the reason was for not having one. I would think it's a great idea to have all of this spelled out in the agreement. What does it look like? What's the out? What are the costs at the end? I would be very interested to hear the reasoning for the intentionally not having one. Is it just so it could be fluid? Um, Let us know. Anyway, back to how this was responded to in the comments. So yeah, okay. So it depends on the contract. Out hard costs. Yep, yep. We aren't out anything inclined to let them go. I think there's a reason this was upvoted so heavily. It's the prevailing opinion.
Mm-hmm. There's if you scroll all the way down, there's an interesting continuation of the story that gets into what happened, and it involved it appears like litigation. So
Oh yeah, let's look at that without commenting on the legal aspect of it, of course.
yep, if you scroll down towards the bottom there, you'll be able to see
So
the
there's an update follow up.
the OP replied, asked him about the terms and client, and instead of being amicable immediately, they said they will sue us and it'll cost us a lot more than the legal fees. So it appears the relationship did not have a happy ending.
Well, and what's interesting is in the original post, The assertion was that we have a great relationship with the client. And that is obviously not the case.
There you go. Almost there. So scroll down a little more. There
It's
we
got
go.
a lot more traction
Yep,
than I realized. Okay.
So, and yeah, that's probably fortunately something I don't have experience with.
Oh, I think I saw it. Scroll up more. Now I want to read this update. Oh,
There you go. Oh, a little more down. We almost had it. We're getting there.
can't wait to watch this on the replay.
Yep, there it is.
Okay, so when they signed with us, it was an agreement that we have minimum 1 year commit. Yep, pretty standard. No long-term contract. Did mention that down the line they may consider moving to a new EMR platform. Okay. New vendor. I mean, that's usually just new vendor for the EMR software, not for your MSP. That's relatively common. Made a decision halfway through our contract, terminate 6 months in, expect to walk without a dime. Is that a discussion?
Yeah, I mean, again,
just let it go, man.
Yeah, not commenting on the legal aspect. This just isn't a client that I would want to deal with. Cut your get what's owed, licensing, whatever costs that you've got into it, and then just let it go.
Let it go. Okay, so Dean wrote back in his comment. So he wrote that they wanted to define how someone would exit on a case-by-case basis, and then they figured if you define how someone can leave, they will leave. Man, I just don't agree with that. Like, I don't think they will. I think if you have a good relationship, they might appreciate that it's spelled out completely how it could end. That seems better to me.
Yep, having the open and transparency is something that I would appreciate versus being the hey, this is ironclad and you can't get out of it. Like, that might make me a little hesitant to pursue.
Yeah, so at my previous organization, it was something of a controversial subject in that we didn't even do annual contracts. Like, it was solely month to month, and the thought was, if they want to leave, and having to retain them month after month was an encouragement for us to continue providing good service because they could walk away so easily. Now, in reality, if we had 1 year contracts, we probably would have let them leave anyway. I'm just not a big believer in holding clients to the fire like that. Okay, so let's look at, have a few extra minutes. Well, if we can pull up the live RMSP, because that was the last story we had pulled ahead of time. Let's see if there's anything. Yeah. Thanks, Logan. We need the cat's opinion.
Millie would just straight up just say, leave me alone, and then run and hide under a bed. So it might be the way to deal with it. I mean, sometimes
Hide under a bed.
Yeah.
I like it. Let's pull up the live subreddit and we'll pick one out of this. If there's anything good. Weekly promo.
We can go meta and comment on the MSP.
Yeah, comment on the MSP dispatch thread.
Project Kickoff.
Oh, Dean just made a really good point. Can you pull up Dean's comment on that? So, yes, if you are looking to exit, your valuations will be extremely dependent on having contracts. That is a fantastic point. And if you, the other thing is that your service contract and your agreement terms don't need to be the same document, right? You can have an agreement terms, like most organizations will call it something like a master agreement that does apply indefinitely or maybe over a 1, 3, 5 year term, even if the rest of it is month to month. But Huge point, Dean. If you are looking to sell or looking to exit in any way, you will see a much lower valuation if you don't have long-term contracts. So it is a thing to keep in mind from a philosophical point. Like, yes, maybe you don't believe in long-term contracts from a service delivery aspect and a motivational aspect, but if you're planning to sell in a couple of years, you better put that to bed.
That is a good point, because they
I
don't
like
look
it.
at NRR or anything. So
Okay, sorry to sidetrack. We can go back to our story scroll. I'm all discombobulated without Ray here. Ooh, project kickoff calls. That's a great topic. I like talking about projects. All right, and I think this will be the last one. It's okay if we end a few minutes early. After sale sells, goes to our project team, do a kickoff call. Curious how some of you are handling your kickoff calls. Is it just the PM? Do you even have PMs? Who else is on the call on the MSP side? Trying to get an idea of what's being asked. Feel like our process may be flawed. Well, most processes are flawed, and some are going into the call just winging it. Well, if you're ending with that line, sounds like you don't even have a process. I'll just turn this over to you, Josh. You're doing a kickoff call, right? Like, say you're doing a security engagement or a new software deployment. Who's in that meeting?
So it'd be your project manager, it'd be the lead, whoever's leading it, any other key stakeholders, and then from the client side again, POC and key stakeholders from the client side. And we have a defined process and a defined checklist to basically outlining the outcomes, estimated timeframes, what to expect, and basically, hey, these are even potential hurdles that could run into, and here's how we anticipate jumping over those hurdles if they do come up. So completely setting expectations, answering any questions, giving the full rundown, start to finish of every step of the way, really.
So I'm going to take a guess and read between the lines on that story. For the most part, in my experience, where this blows up is the person that the prospect or the client had the relationship with until the kickoff comes around doesn't show up to the call. That's where this starts to go south, right? So say, for example, you worked with the salesperson and you got the initial agreement done. Maybe you're doing a kickoff for either the onboarding or some type of startup migration type project. And that salesperson just turned over the whole deal to your ops department, and your PM shows up, and maybe your service manager or the people doing the work show up. If that salesperson isn't there, it really causes the entire thing to go south, because no matter how good your internal handoff procedures, and most of them aren't good, most of them need a lot of work, including my own, right? They needed work when I was doing it as well. That continuity of relationship just disappears, and you as the prospect or as the client start thinking, man, I'm just starting like from zero. They don't know all the circumstances. We had all these discussions about how it was going to go, and now I feel like I have to repeat myself. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like yes, put together an agenda, put together a checklist for things you do in a meeting, and that's easy to do. Take one that goes well and just repeat it. But really try and have that continuity of the relationship and take that into account. Like try to see this from the prospect side. That's my 2 cents.
Yep. And I mean, tying back to everything we've said on pretty much every one of these is communication.
I know.
Like the more you know, rainbow, like communication.
Communication, expectation setting, right? I feel like that is the answer to almost every thread here.
We need to
not just on this show.
We need to program the Raybot to just automatically respond to all of the RMSP questions with just communication.
Ray's always here. Always up because I said I was discombobulated without Ray. He's always there. All right, well, I think we can finish up a few minutes early. We're really only like 4 minutes early. So Josh, thank you for coming on. Anything that you want to mention coming up? Anything you want the audience to know about?
We have there's a pretty cool little security conference next week, Right of Boom. So I know there's a couple people coming. I'm excited to finally meet everybody kind of face to face. Being a part of the MSP community for a while, it's going to be awesome to see people face to face and give some handshakes and hugs. So if you're going to Right of Boom, let me know, and I'd love to hang out and meet you guys.
Yeah, same thing for me. If you're going to Right of Boom, one of my favorite things to do in Vegas is going to run down the strip. So if anyone is interested in doing that, and it's actually usually a bad run from a training perspective because I like stop and take selfies in front of all the hotels, but it's super fun. So if anyone would like to do that, let me know.
Let's go. I'll be there.
The other thing from my side is, so for ConnectWise, the call for speakers are open for IT Nation Secure, and the deadline for that is the 29th. So if you have anything that you want to be submitted or that you might want to present during Secure, get that in this month.
I'll plug one more thing, the MSP Media Network Discord. It's a fantastic resource to hang out. And one thing that I'm actually starting in there is a peer group / hangout. I believe it starts on the 18th, the third Monday of March. And we're going to be hanging out for an hour every other Monday. I got the idea from reading Marnie Stockman's book, Lead It Like Lasso. I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan, and I was like, hey, we need our own Diamond Dogs little peer group. So if you just want to hang out, get to know each other a little better outside of conferences, you kind of talk about whatever you want to talk about. If you're having issues with things, we'll solve them. So come join our peer group and join the Discord.
Is there life outside of conferences? Conferences are life.
This will be my first conference, my first big conference. So
yeah, all right.
I'm excited, very excited.
Well, awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing you. Ray posted no episode next week because we're all going to be at Right of Boom. So if you're there, we can do like MSP Community live by just chatting with each other, or at the bar, or
we're all sitting there scrolling on our phones through Reddit, like, hey, let's talk about this.
Yes. That'd be so lame. We should totally do that.
Let's go. I hear Dean's gonna do live karaoke with me for Let It Go. So
yeah, that'd be cool.
It's a duet.
All right, guys. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming on, Josh, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Here at the MSP Media Network, we have a greater responsibility to recognize women not just for their accomplishments, sales, productivity, and products, but for their direct impact on the MSP channel. Our newest show, Channel Impact Awards, will spotlight the mentorship, charitable works, and behind-the-scenes, above-and-beyond behavior that often goes unrecognized. Our first season of Channel Impact Awards will award women of the channel for their incredible contributions. We hope you'll join us in our commitment to highlighting the exceptional women of the MSP channel. Please scan the QR code on your screen now to nominate a woman you know for the Channel Impact Award. You have 2 weeks to nominate someone you know. Stay tuned on the MSP Media Network for more information on the Channel Impact Awards, including our esteemed panel of judges and the first set of award-worthy nominees.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.